Episode 3.
Do you know who would make a really good Septa?
Did we see one in this episode? She's a bad Septa.
A bad Septa. Did anything else happen this episode?
I think it's an hour long. Something else probably did happen.
Nobody died.
What about all the people at the beginning? A lot of people died.
Oh, that's right. A few of these did die, didn't they? Whoops!
That looks dead to me.
Oh, and there was a horse. That's so sad.
You do see the piles of people, right?
Yeah, now I see them.
Now you see them, right. Good catch. They're difficult to spot. We also got a new dragon.
Oh yeah, we got to see Moondancer, Bayless Dragon. He's a little cutie.
Yes, a little cutie is exactly how I would describe a fire-breathing lizard.
I'm not sure that's what Cole and Party thought.
Some cool things happened and some weird things happened, right?
I think we might have to watch it again and have a talk about it.
So we are opening with a little debate, a little discussion that does escalate just a touch. The Bracken and Blackwood, can we even call it conflict? It's been going on for a long time. They just seem to hate each other in perpetuity.
Yeah, we haven't seen these guys before, have we?
I don't think so, but we recognize their sigil, their sort of little get-up, their outfits from the marriage tour from Rhaenyra, right?
Oh.
Because they fought in that hall. That was Bracken and Blackwoods, and they've discussed them fighting, having land disputes before as well.
Yeah, I think we saw some of these maybe in the trailer as well.
Oh, I recognize this dude. He's opening episode 3 and he is dead just moments later.
This is true.
I like that they are bringing in a lot of the other conflicts that are happening around the realm, not just what's happening at the center of these two camps, the green and the black, but that we're actually seeing what's happening outside of that, because this war is obviously going to impact a lot of people.
Yeah, it's nice to see what's happening on the ground and how it's affecting all these Smallfolk.
I mean, these don't exactly look like Smallfolk to me, but
They
it's
have
really
no dragons. What?
Okay,
What
okay,
you mean?
I get it now.
I suppose we saw more of the Smallfolk in the last episode, actually, and now we're seeing a bit more of the, what do we call them, landsmen, the soldiers, I suppose, and see how the dynamics of the different supporters are playing out.
And it's very clear these two are just itching to start hacking at each other, so they didn't need that much of a push, really. But I do think it's really interesting that the Bracken dude is saying babe killer, because it's clear that the rumours of Rhaenyra the Cruel has spread and has probably had quite an effect on so many people. And this is how it ends. Can we just take a moment to appreciate that they did this from one scene, from the start to the end, and we saw nothing in between? I'm very thankful.
Yeah, the impact is just as great, even if we don't see the actual hacking.
I mean, you did forget that anybody died in this episode, so I'm not sure we can say the impact is just as great. But looking at it here, I'm
Whoops.
sure you'll agree.
Yeah,
these
my
people
bad.
suffered.
My bad.
Next we have
The burial of the Sirs Ariks.
very simple funeral.
No burning.
And Rhaenys takes it upon herself to be a little bit of a voice of reason talking to Rhaenyra. She's trying to make her think, I suppose.
It seems that Rhaenys is one of the few people on Rhaenyra's council that seems to still be hunting for peace.
I think it's noteworthy, perhaps, that Rhaenys has already lost both of her children, and she has been through this herself, and she has kind of grieved, and she's now seeing other people perhaps trying to tear the realm apart, search for revenge for the same thing she has suffered.
I think it's also quite nice that we get to see it be put a bit into perspective, that the war is a lot more complicated than just who started it, which kill started the war, which wronging is responsible, that it's so complicated.
Especially because Rhaenys points out that they will soon not know what even started it, and Rhaenyra seems so sure that, of course, they stole my throne, that's what started it, and Rhaenys has a really pointed way of just telling Rhaenyra that, hello, you're not exactly innocent here.
People are going to see it from many different sides.
And the way she is kind of hinting or nudging Rhaenyra a little bit, telling her that Alicent is no more responsible for Luke than Rhaenyra is for Jaehaerys.
Strong moment, I think.
Yeah, because Rhaenyra has now felt how difficult it is to sit in a position where people won't listen to you, and Rhaenyra is on this side, she is monarch even, and even still people act kind of in her name without her leave. Alicent is just Dowager Queen. She will have way less of a say and way less of an impact.
Because Rhaenyra is sitting with the reins on that side of the war, while Alicent has kind of passed those reins on now.
Maybe she gains a little bit more understanding for how difficult it would have been for Alicent to try to stop any of this either.
But then she does revert just back to that. The only thing that matters is that Alicent Hightower's son is sitting her throne. It feels to me maybe that she's brushing off Rhaenys' counsel a little bit, maybe.
A little bit, and I quite like it. Not because it's a good thing, obviously not, but I like it in the way that I think the only way you could possibly move forward in this situation is by convincing yourself that this is what has to be done. You can't just stop and think, maybe we shouldn't, because you just have to be really singularly focused on one goal and think that you have the right of it if you're going to succeed.
I mean, we're also in episode 3 out of 8 of this season, and since episode 10, they've been said that war is now unavoidable, and it still hasn't truly broken out yet. I suppose maybe we could count this battle in the beginning of this episode as war, but
I do think they have kind of had the kindling of war, if we can say, with this little battle, and they've obviously episode 1 with the revenge killing of the child Jaehaerys. Part of it is also, as they have said a couple times now, or maybe only Rhaenys has been the one to say it, is that they've been holding off as much as they can from engaging in war, because as soon as they bring in the dragons, everything is it's just not going to end well.
As we will see.
Probably. I love this next section with being introduced to Criston Cole, the Lord Han. But what is he doing? What is he doing? He's staring at that chair?
Alicent's POV.
My god, stop it! I'll never forgive you for that. That is going to haunt me. Well, yeah, let's move on.
Don't worry, she's not there. It's nice to see his journey, kind of, as he's taking his place as Hand.
Yes, I feel that so much throughout this episode. I feel so much better about where they're taking Criston after this episode. I really like as he's walking to the council meeting. He's clearly late, he's just taken time for himself. And the way he is walking down and kind of demanding a new respect, I suppose, from the new Kingsguard, who seem to be chillaxing
Lollygagging
on the
about.
stairs. Lollygagging about. Loving their new white cloaks. Not so much their leader.
And is that a necklace he's wearing instead of the usual hand pin?
Criston got some new drip!
Ooh.
I just love the new presence. He is not shying away from the responsibility in a way. He is just accepting that, cool bitches, I'm above all of you now. He's not afraid to talk back and give his opinion to Aegon, and I really like it.
He's really stepping up to the task, it seems.
That he got maybe perhaps a little bit almost by accident. He was just standing there as he was firing Otto and seemed as good an option as anyone else, so...
He didn't seem to be wanting this particular task.
No, but he's now above Alicent, and I love the change in their dynamic. It's delicious. Finally, I can say that.
I didn't actually catch that he is actually above her in station now.
Yeah, and he's talking back to her in a way where he used to be her protector and had to answer to her. And they're obviously discussing what they're going to do about the war in this council meeting and the fight at the beginning of this episode, you know, where nobody died. I'm not going to let that go.
Oh no. There seems to be some disagreements within the council as to how much of a victory the battle between the Bracken and the Blackwoods were.
There is definitely a lack of unity overall in this council meeting. They can't decide on which dragon to send, if any dragon to send, what they're going to do, if it was a victory, if everything is just chaos.
And again, we see Aegon's need to prove himself as being ferocious, fearsome, brave, strong.
I'm not sure if we can totally know what went down, what schemes all of the involved parties in this meeting had until we see what actually happens. But it seems quite clear that Cole has thought things through, and he seems to have cooked up a solid plan in his mind, at least.
To war, then.
To war, then.
I don't know if you noticed at the beginning when Cole sat down, the little cupbearer person came over and wanted to give him some wine, and he just refused the wine. It reminded me of Corlys in episode 1 of season 1.
Ah.
So I take that's a no, you did not notice.
I did not notice, but it's nice to see
Him trying to make better decisions. A clear head.
A clear head.
He is going to need that. I think you might be right that Cole and Aemon has a little bit of a plan, simply for the fact that they are showing Aemon play with that gold coin as they did in episode 1. So that might be a little bit of a clue that they do have a little wink wink nudge nudge thing going on. I don't know. Maybe?
It seemed like he was describing parts of the plan that they had to take the Riverlands and then, you know, omitting the part where Aemon was supposed to fly on Vhagar. Suddenly he has to remain.
But it's strange because here they're saying Vhagar is going to defend the city, which is a very good move. But have they planned otherwise? Are they trying to bait Aegon out of hiding? There are so many things going on in this council, like they can't agree on anything whatsoever. Whether anything is a victory or not. What army they are going to summon. Mysaria, the gentle, loving, innocent. I wish no part of this, except now I'm going to try to extort something out of you.
And Seasmoke.
At the end of the scene, when they talk about Seasmoke and whether the dragons are always so restless, she has that disturbed look on her face when Mysaria suggests that Seasmoke might be lonely, and that's why he's acting so weird. And obviously, Rhaenyra knows she sent Rhaenys away, and he's still technically alive, but maybe he is not anymore. Maybe he is lonely because Rhaenys has died. Maybe off screen.
How convenient.
That is just what struck me when I saw her face, because she seemed way too disturbed at the thought of a dragon being a bit lonely.
I do think it's a little weird how Seasmoke hasn't followed Rhaenys.
In the books, the dragons are supposed to be bonded to their riders for life, whether the dragon or that rider dies first. Dragon riders don't typically take new dragons, or I don't think it's ever happened. A dragon can take a new rider after one dies, but not the other way around, I don't think.
So it's possible that Seasmoke followed Rhaenys across the sea and then now has returned because maybe Rhaenys died?
Maybe, especially if he is also acting a little strange.
They didn't seem surprised to see him back though.
No, so he's probably been there for some time. But you would think that he must have left his dragon. Otherwise, you would think that Rhaenys would be recognized. I think that even if you shave your head, as long as a dragon is following you around, people might start to ask questions.
Yeah, but maybe he put on some glasses or something to help with the disguise.
Obviously, that would do it. Especially because I haven't seen a single person with glasses in this entire show. Have we?
Maybe not.
The scene is also talking about Mysaria wanting an inn. And here we can see the scar that we did not see in the previous episode.
Can't believe I missed that. I wonder where it's from.
I understand that Rhaenyra asked where it was from. It does not look fun. But it seems like Mysaria, after all, did not want to go gently into the night. She wanted to stay and have a role again. And she said she used to think she wanted to be of consequence. She seems to have rediscovered her passion for that. I think it's so ironic that she's kind of hinting to the fact that she wants to support Rhaenyra because Rhaenyra seems to be the only one that has shown mercy. And obviously Mysaria is the great fighter for the Smallfolk, so she wants them treated better. But Rhaenyra has been known to say that their wants are of no consequence, which I am sure Mysaria does not know. Or maybe she does. She was supposed to know everything.
It sort of perplexes me that Mysaria is wanting to support Rhaenyra and her side when she's the big champion of the Smallfolk. Maybe especially after Rhaenys' little entrance. I mean, I would think some of the Smallfolk may have suffered at that. I know that Mysaria's little helpers, probably a good few of them, died in the little house fire that Mysaria believes the High Towers are firmly behind.
She's not even good at her job. She can't even figure out who set her house on fire. I think what's really just grating my gears is the fact that she's pretending to be this, oh, woe is me. I'm just kept a prisoner and I didn't want to be a part of this. I just want to escape and I'm not allowed to escape, and the poor small folk of King's Landing, what are they gonna do? And I have to help them.
My poor baby.
Just say you want power and be done with it. I mean, it's what you really want. It's the walking around the porridge, as we say, that is really annoying me. But her outfit is amazing.
I love the lighting as well.
Beautiful.
So beautiful.
The whole episode is just gorgeous. It's just beautiful shot after shot, truly. Rhaenyra is sending Rhaena away. I'm struggling to remember anything from this scene because the mother line just creeped me out so much. But I suppose Rhaena is at the age where a lot of girls would become mothers in Westeros.
And isn't also Rhaena sort of Rhaenyra's adoptive daughter?
And Daemon's non-adoptive daughter. She's just sending his daughters away.
He didn't seem to care that much about Rhaena anyway. Or Baela, I suppose. I really feel for Rhaena here, who's once again being pushed aside for her lack of a dragon in favor of her sister Baela, who has to stay because she has a dragon.
And it is the truth. What is she going to do? I mean...
But I didn't think Moondancer was really big enough to have much impact in the war. Anyway.
I mean, it's still a dragon. I'm not sure if it would have an impact against the other dragons, but...
Still a fire nuke, I guess.
Yes, against armies, I'm sure it's... you wouldn't say no thanks, just get lost. To my surprise, Daemon actually went to Harrenhal.
I'm kind of shocked at how broken Harrenhal is looking.
Yeah, well, it's been lordless for a while.
I suppose it makes sense after the fire that it's in a bit of a state, but for some reason in my head it didn't register that this was like a bit of a broken home.
I absolutely love the scene of Daemon at Harrenhal. It's just...
spooky.
It's spooky, it feels different, it feels fresh, and just... You just get a feeling that things are about to change in such a beautiful way. The scene where Daemon walks into the room with the open ceiling, shall we say, reminds me so much of Daenerys walking into the throne room in her vision. It's so dark. It's really reminding me of kind of like her dreams, as we talk about later.
My first instinct is also to just hit people when I approach them.
Obviously, we are famously very violent people, you and I. I love how at the end of this really tense walk, where you are just... you have all of these scenarios of what is Daemon going to face in this really creepy castle. You just enter a room where people are having supper and just the least threatening view that could really meet you It's kind of funny, but I do still really, really like it.
Just a very dramatic entrance, and then there's like 3 people sitting there being like, oh, do you want a bowl of soup?
No need for that armor or that weaponry. Whee! We get our first sighting of Alice Rivers, and I'm so excited. I wonder how well these people know Larys, if they so immediately think he murdered his family. They didn't even see him there. He wasn't even supposedly... I mean, he wasn't even there. And they're just entirely sure that it must have been the younger son. He definitely had them both killed. Doesn't speak to having a fantastic character, perhaps.
They were all very, very ready to just swear allegiance to Rhaenyra's side. Despite their lord not being at home.
It's not like Daemon is some fairy godmother. I mean, they're very willing to swear fealty to him, and he is renowned for being violent and not the greatest, sweetest, gentlest.
I suppose they did know that he would cook them and eat them.
Sure.
If not.
It's not like they had much of a choice. I love that the confusion is going so strong. No pun intended. Obviously, they don't expect Daemon to be referred to as Your Grace, and the way he is so threatening. We're really seeing the development of Daemon wanting more and more respect and kind of inching closer and closer to what he probably thought he deserved, to be king or be the heir, the leader, as he said himself he thought he was.
I love the confusion, and we see that later as well, that back at Dragonstone, they still call him Prince.
Right?
Daemon.
This is Daemon's idea all by its own. So it's not like this strong dude has some like really faux pas or anything. He's just following protocol. Happy to bend whichever way Daemon wants.
It's not surprising when there's a dragon lurching on top of the building.
That does tend to have a bit of a stronger effect. I feel like in these first 3 episodes, each episode has kind of a recurring theme that a lot of the characters kind of touch on, and I love that in this episode. It's very much that war is quite senseless. Seeing the Bracken and Blackwoods fight so much, all the death and pain and suffering seems so senseless from the outside, whereas the civil war we're entering feels much more like, oh, but I have a just cause from every single side. But when you see it from a different perspective, it's very much like this is not gonna end the way you think, like it's senseless, and you're gonna end up not even knowing what started it, just wishing it wasn't.
Yeah, because the answer, like he says here, is lost in time. So it's just completely senseless, like you say.
And it's mirroring what Rhaenys said earlier in the episode as well. And he says sin begets sin begets sin, which is also obviously very clearly referencing that Luke took Aemon's eye, Aemon took Luke's life, and then Daemon took Jaehaerys' life. It's just sin upon sin, and it just creates more of the same.
So they're not talking about bread baguettes.
I really feel like a baguette, garlic bread, I could solve a lot of the fighting here. Have they considered trying to solve this with a really good dinner? Oh wait, they did that. Didn't work. Daemon saying that people should obey their lord, no matter his condition, reminds me of, is he talking about Viserys? That people should have listened to him, even though he wasn't able to really say much towards the end. It might also be looking forward, who knows?
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering if they're trying to do a little bit of a spin on maybe Daemon trying to face off against Rhaenyra as well, like trying to stake his own claim. They talked about that a little bit in the last episode, and here with this scene where we see him take Harrenhal for himself and also demanding to be called Your Grace. I'm not sure if they're trying to do some more with that.
I wouldn't be entirely surprised by the way they've set it up. They seemed really to argue during the council meeting which army was going to come to their aid, but here it seems like the Hightower army has already reached King's Landing, so I suppose Hightower it is. The Lannister army might come in later, who knows?
Isn't that somewhat of a theme in this universe, that it takes a long time to move the armies around?
Yes, and the Hightower army was already on its way, wasn't it? Sir Gwayne.
Looks a bit like a fool.
So apparently 3 months is the time it takes to move an army from Old Town to King's Landing.
So it seems.
So when did they actually start telling them to come? Because has Viserys been dead for 3 months at this point?
Oh my god, has it been that long?
It doesn't feel like it, but maybe. I really like that Criston isn't shook by this, because he has been so unhinged and shaken by everything in the past 2 episodes. And here, this previous Hand's son is questioning his upbringing and his right to be there, and he doesn't seem shaken by it, which I think is really cool.
I feel like Cole is the most settled we've seen him in a long time in this episode.
Yes, he just needed a rising station.
He just needed a hand.
It's clear that Cole doesn't want Gwayne to come with them, but he's still just dealing with it, handling it. Oh, in his heart, she knew what to find.
In his heart.
I really love the slight evident change in dynamic between Criston and Alicent, because Criston is, as we already mentioned, above her.
Yeah, this scene is a little cute.
Definitely an improvement on their previous scenes.
I mean, I know I'm probably grasping at straws here, because I just so badly want there to be more to this dynamic than just,
Toxic.
let's degrade these 2 characters through the mud. But there's nice to see some tenderness between them. Some sign that there might be a little bit of love there somewhere. I mean, wouldn't receiving a little bit of a boob cloth just make your heart sing?
Can't say that it would, but I'm also not going to war, so maybe if I were.
There are worse things to receive.
I think it's nice that for once we see Criston ask this of Alicent rather than Alicent kind of asking things of Criston. It just seems like it's perhaps moving in the direction of restoring a little bit of balance between them.
Yeah, I also like how he's kind of the one to leave the interaction. Because before we see sort of Alicent is trying to leave Criston.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's calling her back, and now it's almost like he is dismissing her, not the other way around.
Love that for him. I really love that for him. You can see that Criston has his hands, a necklace, a lot of hands holding each other, forming a necklace. It seems like he has that instead of the typical pin that the Hand to the King usually has or wears, which makes sense because where would you put that on so much armor?
Couldn't you just meld it in place?
Yeah, but what do you do when your breastplate gets dirty and muddy and you need another one? And, it's very inconvenient. It's so much easier with a necklace. Plus, it just makes you special. Were you hungry after watching this episode?
Starving.
Would you say you were starving like a crow?
Maybe not that badly. It's nice to see that Aegon's paintings are still hanging up.
Sure. He's an artist, that one.
It was a big investment. Cost him greatly.
Cost other people more.
He's getting his money's worth. It's the price of art.
It is absolutely infuriating to watch Rhaenyra's small council meeting. Have the lords laugh at her is...
The disrespect?
Not the best. At least, even though they were trying to manipulate Aegon, his lords didn't laugh at him. Even though they just went quiet. They didn't openly humiliate him like these people do to Rhaenyra.
I mean, the Blackwoods seem to have more respect for her than her own council. The doubt that we're seeing on their faces when she speaks as well. It makes me so angry on her behalf.
It's also mirroring a little bit the green scene we saw earlier, where both sides here are just having so many issues. They're having issues between their interpersonal relationships. They're having issues with their lords and their in-laws. It's just all going in the wrong direction.
They are waiting for Daemon to take Harrenhal, it seems, but I got the impression in the last episode that they didn't know what Daemon was even up to, that, he has to go on his own path of enlightenment. We'll see him maybe never again.
So they're very much just doing this on, we think that is what he's doing. He is kind of running the ship a little bit, as much as he can.
It's also kind of gross how it seems like the council is making a play at running this war for Rhaenyra, just make an attempt to have her shipped off somewhere and then they can have their way, because they seem to be having a very different mind about how to go about this war. And Daemon, I feel, carries some of the responsibility for that, because from the very start, he has been undermining her after the death of Viserys, and with her miscarriage and everything, all the way through that, Daemon made it very apparent to the council that he was going to be running this ship. And it seems like that dynamic may have continued all the way up until this point.
I think it also might parallel a little bit how Alicent and Otto and really Aegon's council is trying to undermine him and do what they want. He definitely has the respect sort of outwardly, but I just think that it's interesting to see that both of the sides here are trying to undermine the ruler to get their own way through this war.
It kind of feels like Rhaenys is the only one in Rhaenyra's council that will actually respect her, listen to her, and take her side.
It's a little bit of a highlight for me, these short scenes that we've had this season with Rhaenys and Corlys as well. They really develop their story in such a short amount of time. I always feel like a little bit shocked because suddenly during their conversation this time, we see that Joffrey is not a darling in Corlys' eyes anymore. Didn't he love the strong boys? And now he suddenly has a problem with one of them inheriting Driftmark.
I mean, he seemed to be accepting of Lucerys, at least, as his heir, but I guess in his mind maybe he never saw Joffrey as his heir in the same way. And since they're, what shall we say, not even really considered to be Laenor's trueborn children.
It's hypocrisy. Let's not even try to... Don't give him the benefit of the doubt. It's just he's now seeing another way. And he's also not seeing Rhaena. I'm genuinely not sure what way he's seeing, but he's not liking the path of Joffrey or Rhaena.
To me, it just seemed like he was trying to push this issue into the future. Let's handle it later.
But he's just not very good at dealing with things.
Yeah.
He has previously just ran off to war or fighting.
Because either he has an issue with bastards or he has an issue with girls.
Why not both?
Or both.
Could be both, no?
And he's just brushing it off, not wanting to deal with this issue. But they're out of time, so it's very frustrating. In this scene where Rhaena is leaving Dragonstone alongside Joffrey, Viserys, and Aegon, we do also see them bring the two hatchlings, Tyraxes and Stormcloud. Are they bringing the dragon tamers as well? Who's gonna train these baby dragons? Is anyone gonna teach these young children how to handle dragons? Or how to raise them? Because as we've seen from previous episodes of the show, then the children very much need help and guidance in how to make the dragons actually listen to them. And also with how Rhaena doesn't have a dragon of her own, she can't really bestow that knowledge herself.
Doesn't she get those eggs? 4 eggs, which is... I'm wondering if some of those are going to be Daenerys' eggs. I mean, it's a very peculiar number, 4. That leaves 3 eggs to Daenerys and 1 egg for Rhaena, maybe.
Bye-bye, babies.
It must be difficult for Rhaenyra to see her children off, but obviously she does not want her children to have the same fate as Helena's, so, or at least one of Helena's. So I think it's probably a wise course of action to get them out of Dodge.
Yeah, I assume it's gonna be a lot better for those children if they can grow up outside of the war.
Yeah, as it is for most children.
Yeah.
The scene with Helaena and Alicent was a nice-ish new development. It was a development of a kind. At least I like that we see a little bit more into Helaena as a character, where she's saying something other than just a prophecy.
I think it's nice to also see that Alicent is helping Helaena feel her grief and make her feel that it's okay to grieve.
It's interesting between all of these characters where we see mostly that they absolutely do not care for anybody other than their own, really. Helaena seemed to have a very kind of unique awareness of all the people in King's Landing who have a much more difficult life than she does. I think it's also a bit sad maybe that she perhaps did not see their support, but rather thought that they must not like her or kind of think that she doesn't even deserve to feel grief because there is such an injustice in how she and the people of King's Landing live.
Again, I'm a little bit disappointed maybe that Alicent seems to so quickly disregard Jaehaerys' loss and just focuses on Helaena, and it kind of seemed like Helaena wanted to maybe grieve Jaehaerys a little bit together in this moment, and then it just Alicent is trying to grieve for Helaena instead, and then Helaena has to forgive Alicent for, I'm assuming she is referring to the thing with Cole.
I think so. I wonder if that is what Alicent was about to bring up again, and Helaena is just obviously not wanting to talk about it. Who would want to talk about that? Let's be real.
I suppose it's nice to see that they at least have a closer bond between each other than Alicent has with her other children.
And it seems better than last episode. Like, Alicent seems in this episode to have a little bit more to give to her children rather than just trying to not unravel herself. We see some of the new Kingsguard members in the scene where Aegon is seemingly readying himself to fly to war on Sunfire. He is at least putting on some new armor, and his friends are there.
Aegon seems kind of sick of it. Like, his friends just making a joke out of everything.
We see throughout the scene, really, that they really don't seem to grasp the responsibility that Aegon actually seems to have taken on a bit.
I think it also makes sense that Aegon isn't really in a place where he wants to be joking around right now, especially after losing Jaehaerys and all of the things going on in the war.
Larys is such a liar because saying that armor is exquisite is such a lie.
He looks a little silly, doesn't he?
Silly is the best description. Why does he look so silly? I think one of the worst things is that this armor has no kind of shoulder protection to it, because once you have the shoulders, that really gives a frame to armor.
He looks like a child. But I suppose it makes sense for Larys to be complimenting him and trying to put him in the right mood for whatever scheme he's trying to run down his throat.
Which is what I said, he's a liar.
Larys is of course also rewarded and is being appointed the new Master of Whisperers. I'm not sure that's what he was trying to get out of this conversation, but
anything to have what Viserys didn't, I suppose. And Larys is obviously trying to persuade Aegon to not go by telling him this alternative scenario that might happen if he does end up leaving, that Alicent and Aemond will rule. I don't know if this is kind of setting up a paranoia line where he can just feed Aegon more and more of this "you cannot trust your family," so he can move him away from them. I don't know.
Inserts his own clause.
He obviously wants to be the one with the most influence over the king, so it would make sense. I think this might also have something to do with what happens later in the episode when Aegon walks in on Aemond, because if he did believe Larys, he might be a little bit annoyed and feel betrayed by Aemond.
Ooh, yeah, like there is a scheme
So
in the works.
he might. What we saw a lot in the latter half of the first season was especially Alicent trying to have her children work together as a team, and obviously that has worked well for them, and Larys trying to divide them means that they're not going to be as strong and much more easily influenced. Aegon definitely seems a bit rattled by the time Larys walks out of the room. I'm not sure it's a very good thing that he is continuing to be a bit confused by the fact that none of his mates are going to take their responsibility seriously.
No, he seems quite frazzled at how unserious his friends are acting.
Well, we do have a scene and we have a returning character.
Who is that?
We're obviously seeing King's Landing at night again and this tavern. And we see a barmaid that is obviously Dyana from episode, what is it? She's assaulted by Aegon in episode 8? I think it's 8. And for I can remember, she got a huge bag of coin. Why is she...
Not huge enough to get her out of toiling in the service to men?
I am so confused what she's doing here. Why didn't she get out, get a house, why is she...
We didn't really see how much money she got, I suppose, or weren't told.
No, I suppose not. And none of us live in that time. We don't know inflation. A bag of coin of that size today would do very little, but it very much seemed like take this, get lost, say nothing. I very much assumed that would be enough money to not have to be a barmaid.
I would have hoped so, but it seems not.
Yeah. Well, she's back.
Now this new character, we haven't seen him before, have we?
I don't think so.
But he is boasting about his Valyrian heritage.
Claims to be Viserys' brother, no less.
It doesn't look much like it, as these other people are pointing out as well. But it might be a cool thing to claim, I suppose, if you live in King's Landing and you don't have a proud ancestry.
And I suppose that having quite a few Targaryen bastards running around wouldn't be the least plausible thing ever.
They have made it quite clear that they do like going out, romping around town.
And taking what they want, the Targaryen way.
And only Alicent seems concerned about handing out any moon tea.
All these poor maesters, what are they gonna do? They're just slaving away making that moon tea, but there just simply isn't enough for all the Targaryens humping their way through King's Landing.
A tragedy.
I wonder if he has met any other, seeing as he calls himself a dragon seed.
Well, they need to have a name for them when they're that many, perhaps. I do think it's kind of interesting. One of them is mentioning how he doesn't look like Viserys or Daemon. But then he is retorting back that how do you know what they look like? And I think it's a clever thing to have in there because it reminds us that the Smallfolk don't actually know what the royalties look like. Because it's not like they have their own social media platform and their face printed everywhere.
But he does seem quite self-important, and I am sure these people are not the first ones he has told. This also very must not be shared secret, because people will take his head for it. It seems like it's probably been a part of his branding for a while. And we have also seen Rhaenyra's kids have brown hair, and they are very much from Rhaenyra. But obviously the father was not Targaryen, so he definitely can be a Targaryen bastard.
It's quite funny to be so outspoken about his contrary opinions while in King's Landing, in places where the king has been known to probably visit. Oh, Dyana is the one who's serving him too?
I think that shot was in the trailer. It doesn't seem like he recognizes her from what we have seen, which would be in line, I think.
I bet she recognizes him.
Yes, of course.
I was a little surprised to see the shift in him from the previous scene where he seems so serious and seems to be disagreeing with his friends who take their oaths so lightly and all these things. And then suddenly he's just in on their shenanigans with this friend who's having a wedding and whatnot.
He very much seems to have kind of returned to the drunkard Aegon that we saw a lot in season 1.
Yeah, I don't really see any sign of his grief or the seriousness or even the anger that he has shown in the last episode.
But I still think you see the way he is impacted when we get to Aemond. Obviously, they walk through this brothel. I get why the scenes are there. It's supposed to be a part of his whole, oh, I am so familiar with all the brothels. I am not faced by opening all of these curtains with people just get on. Try not to be a prude. I think it's a bit much. I really don't need to see something that graphic.
At least there is a purpose to it.
Bit of a jump scare, really. Definitely the scariest scene in the whole episode.
Yeah, really showing Aegon in his nasty colors.
And then, obviously, at the end here, he is opening a curtain and he finds Aemond. And I love this scene. It's so wild. Only Aegon would be so dumb as to laugh at Aemond. You can even see his friends be terrified. They typically will laugh with Aegon when he is laughing at someone else. They're trying to kind of join in because, of course, he is the king. But Aemon is just that much scarier. I'm not sure he understands what he's doing here. And I think, as we mentioned from the previous scene with Larys, he might have a little bit of anger towards Aemon here, because he is suspecting him of wanting what he has. So maybe he is going back to what they did when they were younger, where Aegon is bullying Aemond.
This is very much what Alicent warns him not to do back in the scene, where she tells him that, oh, he can muck him about in private, but they need to be a united front on
This
the
is
outside.
very much not private. But obviously the scene itself is very uncomfortable, very, very icky to watch. But I think it's still, once we get past all of the brothelness of it all, I wonder if they're doing something with this going forward, that their relationship between the two brothers is going to deteriorate. They have seemed to be working towards kind of the same goal for a while, even if Aemond clearly is lusting after more power.
Yeah, and Aegon has even demanded respect for Aemon and a place at his table, in his council. I think it's an interesting way to show Aemon's vulnerability, showing him in this scene at a really, really tender moment. He's literally naked, laid bare, and then not spit on by his brother, but very much mocked at his most vulnerable, and seeing when he's walking out and kind of just claiming his dignity, just walking out in the full flaffling nude.
Full flaffling nude. I love the way you say that because it's very much claiming his dignity.
It shows how battle-hardened he is through this bullying, I suppose, because it's something he's gone through a lot of his childhood, and it's made him stronger for it.
It's very satisfying to see Sir Gwayne get humbled a little bit in the scene where they are riding off to that inn and Criston Cole is trying to stop them. It definitely seems like he is testing Criston a little bit. Criston has had so many scenes of being a little bit of a wet sock where it's just, he is humiliated, he is acting unhinged, he is acting like an idiot, and here you truly get to see that he is very good at what he does. You get to see why he ended up in the place he did. It wasn't just because he fucked Alicent, you know? It's an experienced fighter. He is observant. He is the one seeing that this is, first of all, a horrible idea, but also the dragon is arriving. He is the reason they probably survived this. I don't know what Bela would have done, obviously, but she had that fire in her eyes.
I really like that the dragon did show up, because otherwise I feel like this might have been another scene where people kind of think that Cole is being...
A nervous Nelly.
Yeah, and just being difficult for no reason. It actually shows that he has merit to his skills. I feel like we also get to see just a glimpse of Daemon in Baela here, because Baela has been ordered by Rhaenyra to stay high and stay out of danger and just observe and keep her eyes on the situation, basically, yeah.
She does a little more than that.
She definitely engages. She doesn't burn them to a crisp.
I think she enjoys putting the fear of God into them.
I feel like this is something Daemon definitely could have done. And it's nice to see Gwayne be put in his place a little bit and actually seems to harness up some respect for Cole after this.
I know this isn't canon, but in my head he might have peed his pants just a little bit.
Oh, I think he peed them a lot.
And we are moving swiftly into a small council meeting for Rhaenyra on the black side, where Baela is informing Rhaenyra of what she learned. And again, as you said, Baela has definitely a streak of Daemon in her. You can see that there is a little bit of tension as Rhaenyra realizes that Baela has not exactly followed her orders 100%.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is another moment of Rhaenyra realizing that she cannot fully control everyone on her side.
And I feel like so many of these meetings go in a very similar direction, where people are disagreeing, people are trying to convince Rhaenyra of something and she's not sure, and it's just very much more of the same again and again.
Yeah, who are these counselors?
I suppose her allies. At the beginning of the episode, Rhaenys had that talk about restraint and all of this. Personally, I would feel it would be that much more powerful if Rhaenys didn't end last season with killing a whole bunch of people as she shot up through the ceiling.
Yeah, she kind of lost her superiority high ground there. Very difficult to get it back.
You know it is, and nobody has talked about it. And it's such a big deal. And as they are bringing in more and more of the stories of the common people of King's Landing, or just the realm in general, it's so difficult to ignore that she must have killed hundreds.
I want to hear some of their thoughts on it.
I think they're probably upset.
I mean, I would be. Look at how upset they got for... What was it, 12 rat catchers that were hung?
Mm-hmm. That was apparently the big political disaster, but Rhaenys hundreds, possibly thousands, who knows, is just never mentioned, and Rhaenys is still allowed to have this moral superiority complex where she is suddenly the voice of reason. It's a bit hypocritical. I mean, actions have consequences, and I mean that when you make a show and a character does something, that there is consequences to how people feel about that character, and there should be consequences within the show
rightfully,
as well.
Yeah. We do once again also get a little bit of a look at how Rhaenyra is able to listen to her advisors and seems to take that time to ponder it and not make a hasty decision, at least. She is really struggling to get on board with this war petition that everyone wants her on.
She is really much veering into the territory of being quite indecisive. You need to either, surrender, find a peace, or engage in the war. My favorite part of this episode is definitely Daemon and the ghosts.
And the witches.
First of all, I love the way this is shot. It's making things very spooky, but it's not going into that sort of quite scary territory where they're trying to make it...
I feel like it's tiptoeing it.
Oh, really? I just think it's so mysterious, and I just really love the shift in it, because the show so far has been not very magical, apart from obviously the dragons. This episode is very much sort of introducing that new aspect.
Oh yeah, it's nice to see some of that mysticism brought back in. Especially to Daemon, who's like such a skeptic and so dismissive of prophecies and things like that. I do really wonder what it was at the door there.
I think it's a ghost.
Because we don't see any like shadow or anything. And no legs. And there's like...
Makes sense.
Very specifically like a hole underneath the door. So there seems to be some
and it's because it's a ghost.
something at play.
Obviously, it's really nice to have a sighting of Millie Alcock as well. Although it's not exactly nice, is it? It's quite gruesome. But I love this scene.
I'm kind of shocked at how graphic they're daring to be with this child.
But at this point, we have already seen it. We have
know
already
what it
seen
is.
him dead on that carriage through the streets. We have heard the murder. And I would not be surprised if this entire thing is not the actual child, though it doesn't have to actually even have the prosthetic of that wound, but it does look very real, so who knows. But it's very graphic, and I love the symbolism of this. I love that it's young Rhaenyra as well. Very much. It just has so much more impact when you're seeing how long this has been going on for, how long he has messed up her life.
The ghosts of his past.
Yes, for sure.
Come to haunt him.
I really like the emotion in him as well. It really works. I'm not sure I think, oops, it was an accident works so well, but showing a character having to face the consequences, the hurt they have inflicted on others, I am very much here for that. Of course, by the time the illusion breaks, we see him standing by the weirwood tree. Famously super magical trees all throughout the books and in the main TV series as well. There is so much talk about the weirwood trees and the faces that are carved into them, or if they're even carved, they do have these faces, and the faces tend to change. I know that in the books some characters lie down and sleep next to these trees and they have the weirdest dreams. Obviously Bran is seeing future and past and everything through these trees.
Are the trees evil?
Well, that is the question, is it not? Because they do seem rather evil at times, don't they? And I just think it's so cool that he has walked up to this tree and he's been in this illusion. Oh, it just has so much mysticism around it.
How intriguing is this new character this episode?
Do we love her or do we love her?
I'm very, very excited to see the role that this character is going to play. And I would love to see more magic.
I would too, especially if it continues like this. And I think it's perfect that she is introduced together with this magic. It's making her seem like she might be part of the magic.
Given Daemon a prophecy of his own to torment him as well.
Love to see it. So we previously in the episode saw that Rhaenyra finally did open that letter from Alicent. We are not entirely sure what that said, but it clearly got her thinking something. Because when she has that council meeting with Baela a bit later, it's clear that she's still in thought about whether or not she is just going to rain fire upon her enemy. Maybe I am overthinking things, but it seems like she might have Alicent's little letter in mind when she has that council meeting, and she doesn't actually want to just go full-scale war quite yet, because she is thinking that she wants to talk to Alicent first. Explore other options. Exactly. And then she gets help from Mysaria to have that little entering into King's Landing, and
yeah, look at Mysaria being useful and actually knowing someone's schedule.
This is very much reminding me of the plan that was hatched at the end of last episode where the Ariks were fighting. It's a bit silly. You have to suspend a bit of belief, I think, to go along with it. But it's also not the worst plan in the world. And it does kind of work. But it still feels like just a tiny bit silly. Because while the common people might not recognize Rhaenyra in a nun getup, a lot of guards around Alicent might.
Yeah, because that was what I was thinking as well, that surely the White Cloaks have seen Rhaenyra up close. She may have been on Dragonstone a lot the last few years. But all it takes is one look from someone who knew her quite well and stood guard at her side. And her ruse is up.
They have obviously changed out some of the King's Guards, so a lot of fresh faces that might not recognize her, but still, it's such a risky plan that seems like it's way more likely to just end with Rhaenyra dead than not.
Yeah, but it tells a good story. Of friendship, being reunited, religion. I love the little look that she's giving to Rhaenyra when she thinks it's just a Septa, kind of like, really? You had to come right next to me?
It's like when you're on the bus and somebody sits down next to you and there are other seats that are completely available. You're just like, really?
Oh, it's so funny.
The start to this conversation is another one of those like comedic relief moments. I love it. I really, really, really enjoy it. It's just such a real moment between two people who used to be very close friends.
Because obviously it's a very tense moment, and Rhaenyra has probably thought in her head, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to be able to start this conversation, convince her to talk with me without alerting the guards? Do I have to threaten her? Can I do that quietly without scaring her too much? Like, you can just see that there's been a lot of wheels turning in her head how to do this, and then it doesn't really go great.
And something I noted is that when Rhaenyra is speaking to Mysaria, she says, if war can be averted, it is my duty to avert it. That sounds good. It makes Rhaenyra look good and intelligent and restrained. But Rhaenyra doesn't do everything in her power to do that, does she? She does actually mean that what she will do is try to make Alicent make the other side back down. But she's not going to back down.
Yeah, because she's not here to surrender, even if that could have averted the remaining war.
Because Alicent does say that, so you're here to surrender, and she's not.
She wants Alicent to somehow get Aegon to surrender, it seems.
It's showing that Rhaenyra wants to avoid war, because who wouldn't? Well, Daemon. But she's not willing to do the thing that she is asking someone else to do.
No, because she still wants the throne. She still wants her inheritance.
And there is this sense of not being entirely honest with herself. And I think this could be said for probably both sides. Thinking that I am doing what I can, so I have done my part in avoiding this bloodshed. She herself is not going to bend on this, but she does want someone else to do that. She also is not arriving here with some fantastic peace offer, is just demanding, really. And that is what she did when she sent Luke to Baratheon at the end of season 1 as well. She just sent him demanding he remember his oath and stay faithful and be her ally. She is not really kind of...
bringing any carrots.
No carrot whatsoever. Very, very low fiber diet.
It is a brave and a nice thing that she's doing in coming over here and risking her own life, essentially, to talk to Alicent, but then she's bringing nothing. She's doing all that to ask Alicent to get the other side to surrender, basically, which is a huge ask.
She's asking the wrong person because it's the only person she has any sway with.
Yeah, because she has no relation to any of her siblings. I suppose at this point, Alicent might also believe that Rhaenyra is in on the scheme where Jaehaerys was concerned. Even if she's saying that she wasn't, just like she said to Rhaenys that she wasn't behind Laenor. Maybe she thinks that her word alone is just going to be good enough. But of course, to Alicent, who has seen Rhaenyra flat out lie on her mother's grave, no less, is not going to take Rhaenyra on her word quite so easily.
I really like the way they have brought back that conversation from episode 4 in season 1, where Rhaenyra is lying to her, because it was such a defining moment for Alicent's character that she is never going to believe her again. And it's very difficult to try to untangle how much a part of each sin or crime every party was.
Yeah, it kind of rounds back to earlier in the episode with the whole sin begets sin that we talked about earlier.
It's really nice how they have kind of centered these episodes around themes or lessons, if you can call it that. And yet Rhaenyra is accusing Alicent of, will you actually let thousands die just because you can't back down, when she could just as easily say that to herself.
Starting to become a bit hypocritical as well, because Rhaenyra has the power to back down. Alicent doesn't have the power to back down. She's not the one who's on the throne usurping Rhaenyra.
And there is just this paradox of both sides trying to do the same thing to the other and feeling like, but I have the right of it, so the other side is doing this in bad faith. They should be the one to back down. They are the one causing suffering and not me, because I am rightfully here. I am doing this for the right reason. Is there a right reason? Is there a good reason to keep doing this?
It feels very authentic, and I think maybe that's what makes me like it, that this is probably how a lot of disputes are rooted in the real world as well.
Absolutely, it's so human. Of course, this conversation ends with talking about the misunderstanding Alicent had of Viserys just before he died, where she got the impression that Viserys said she had to make sure that Aegon would be his heir.
Rhaenyra says that Viserys has upheld Rhaenyra as heir every single day of his life after her mother died. And Alicent, of course, knows that this is not true, that he did waver in his decision during the Aegon's second name day, during the hunt. And I believe Viserys even admitted this to Rhaenyra, but Rhaenyra, of course, doesn't know that Alicent knows that Alicent was indeed the one that Viserys was wavering to. And it is clear that he's talking about the Song of Ice and Fire, the prophecy. To us, that's clear. It's not clear to Alicent because he's never told Alicent that. And I think Rhaenyra framing the Song of Ice and Fire as if it's just a story, as if it's not this huge prophecy, is also a bit misleading. Because it makes it seem that like Viserys was just talking about some childhood...
A bedtime story.
Story, perhaps, in his whimsical moments, when it was very much a prophecy in which he at one point believed very much that he would have a male heir placed on the throne that would be relevant to this whole prophecy in some way.
I really like the line where Alicent is saying, "I swear this to you upon the memory of my mother." Because that is obviously what Rhaenyra says to Alicent when she is lying through her teeth. And she is kind of giving her back that same coin, but she's also backing it up by saying that I have not been untrue. Like I'm not the liar of the two of us. I might be a bitch, but I'm not the gaslighting liar.
Yeah, because she isn't actually lying
She's not.
here either. She's of course a bit biased, wanting to believe what she wants to believe, probably.
First of all, I'm not a huge fan of them bringing in this prophecy. I might become a fan of it, but I feel like it's very much a cheap cop-out. Like, you're letting these characters, you're saving some purity, you're trying to make them appear better than they truly are, because they have this higher cause. It's very much reminding me of like a religious war or a just cause war, where people have convinced themselves that yes, war is terrible and this is awful and lots of people will die for me, but it's just the way it is. This just has to happen because this is for the greater good. It's very much annoying me because I feel like they're trying to make the audience feel like, oh, so it has to happen. You know, they're trying to convince the audience that this is for the greater good when it's obviously not. And I think that is what is annoying me a little bit. Obviously within this universe, prophecies are often very misinterpreted, and that is how things just go to hell, basically. Characters get these prophecies that aren't necessarily wrong, but they interpret them in a way that is favorable to themselves or suit their paranoia, and the way they act with the knowledge of that prophecy really causes a lot of tragedy.
And I think it's realistic that people are going to do that.
Yes, but the show needs to make that clear and not just pretend like this is some holy war.
Yes, because there's no focus. There's no focus on how this is going to affect the whole realm if she lets Aegon be king, or if Aegon lets Rhaenyra be queen. There's very little focus on what is there to be gained or lost. This war doesn't need to happen for the realm to flourish, for them to be happy, to save them from some great tragedy.
I think it's more interesting to have characters that do want power, that do kind of terrible things, instead of, oh, they do terrible things, but they're not terrible people. I mean, it's a bit frustrating as a viewer, I think, to have to be told that, in a way.
Yeah, because they can do these terrible acts without being evil through and through. We can show them tell themselves that they do this for a good reason, but we still need to see that ultimately they are being selfish.
I know this would just add to all of the misunderstandings. There is already way too much of it in this show when it comes to all the really important big bad plot points. But if Rhaenyra actually believed Alicent that her father had changed his mind, that would have been really interesting to see what she would have done with that information. And maybe she realized later that that was also a mistake. I get that there are just, it gets to be a little bit too many mistakes, but instead we get that Alicent has to realize her mistake and she's still going, they're kind of framing it a little bit as if she is still going ahead with it. She doesn't care that she was wrong and she's the reason for the war. When that's not true, because this is happening whether she wants it or not. And I just have a feeling that it would happen whether Rhaenyra thought Viserys did actually say he wanted Aegon to be king or not.
I think it could have been interesting to see what Rhaenyra would have done if she believed that Viserys had betrayed her there at the very end, after having sworn to her and reinstated her as heir, and then sworn on Emma's memory, I believe, that he would not replace her. Because I think her anger would have been very, very valid if he did indeed replace her after all of that.
But it's very naive of her to think that Alicent can now just undo a whoopsie.
And yes, she has some sway with Aegon, but it is really, as you say, just much too late. And I think we even see that it was too late even in episode 9 of the first season. That Alicent really did not have as much power as she thought she did.
And this is bringing me to one of the less great things about this episode. She is telling Rhaenyra, you should go, or they will find you, or they'll catch you. Which is very much a repeat of Rhaenys, when Rhaenys could have just ended the entire green threat. Rhaenys could have gotten rid of all of the greens, and the war would have been over, but instead she killed hundreds and flew off. Alicent could have just said, hey, Rhaenyra is here, can you just take care of her? And she would have ended Aegon's opposition.
And she wouldn't even have necessarily needed to kill her right there and then.
No.
Well,
I am assuming that next episode is opening with Alicent telling a guard, and lots of guards are going in and picking up Rhaenyra and putting her in chains, right? That is the only logical. It's just a bit frustrating. And also they're trying to convince each other, I had nothing to do with your son's murder. Or in Alicent's case, the grandson. But they have spent so much time really building up resentment. I find it quite unbelievable that you can just let all of that go in the span of a conversation that lasts 5 minutes, if that. It's just, things move so quickly and I'm struggling with the believability of it. I do really like parts of this conversation, but I'm just really struggling.
It's just, Alicent, can you please stop this so that thousands don't have to die? It just seems a bit short-sighted to me. I don't really believe it. I don't believe that Rhaenyra thinks that Alicent can just whip out a magic wand and end this.
I do have a couple of issues with this episode. I do think this conversation and the believability of it is one, but there are a couple of lines in this episode that strike me a little bit like, okay, this is a modern show. We have the Gwayne and Criston scene when they are about to run from a dragon, where Gwayne is saying they are going to rendezvous. Is that something they said in Westeros at this time? Isn't that something we say today? Actually, how long has that been used in the English language? Let me see. The earliest known use of the noun rendezvous is in the mid-1500s. Obviously, this conflict is based on one in the 12th century. So that just took me out a little bit. It genuinely just took me out of the whole thing a little bit. And the second thing is that Rhaenyra is asking Mysaria if she is just going up to the Red Keep and she's going to ring the bell. Did they have doorbells on the Red Keep?
Maybe one of those electrical ones so they could install various dragon roars.
Sure. But maybe they do have bells to, like an actual bell to ring. I wouldn't know, but that's my nitpicking. I want to talk about the highlight of the episode. My highlight of the episode was definitely the scene with Daemon and all of the magical mystery going on there. I'm so happy to include that. I feel like so much of this episode is kind of setting up, perhaps, for the next one. That having that little inclusion of something that feels very new and fresh and fantasy is just really exciting, I think.
Yeah, I guess my favorite is gonna have to be a new dragon sighting. I'm easy to please, okay? Just show me some dragons.
Did you want to give the episode a rating?
0 out of 0 Dreamfires.
Yeah, you're not technically wrong, I suppose. I think maybe why I liked it is that it doesn't feel as heavy and dark as the two first ones.
It felt a bit grounded in a way, this episode.
I think you're right.
I feel like the characters were working on the ground, and I don't know what that's supposed to mean when I
No, I think we've been sitting here for too long. It's just, it just means what it means. Take whatever you will from it.